Sir, thank you for.
All right, just go.
Okay, thank you for participating in this interview. So I'd like to just first ask you, what race do you identify with?
White,
Okay, and what gender do you identify with?
male.
Okay. Is there a particular political party that you feel most closely identified with? Or?
Political party, no.
Okay.
Political
ideology?
ideology, yeah, conservative.
Okay.
Yep.
So would you say you're more of a classic conservative, or do you just?
I'd say contemporary conservative would be the best characterization.
So I'm going to ask you some questions on very hot-button current events issues.
Okay.
I'd like you to respond honestly. If you don't want to answer a question, just tell me if that's fine too.
All right.
Okay. So on the question of foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, what would you characterize as your stance on that?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems with our spending is that a lot of our military budget goes to third-party military contractors that actually make a profit off of starting unnecessary wars. So I think readjusting the way that we budget the military is very important. And so I would not. I think military intervention in the Middle East is a bad idea under the current budget that we have, and we need to reorganize the way that we spend money in the Department of Defense before we do anything in terms of starting more wars or escalating any foreign policy.
Okay. And then speaking of budget, I know that's a big problem with domestic policy. So in general, on domestic issues, such as not mostly the economy, because I know that's it could be good for the economy, but domestic issues that are very temporary, like race, poverty. What's your sort of solution? What's your concept on the issues of race and poverty?
So I've always had the mindset that the correct course of action for dealing with things like poverty is not to give things to people, it's to give opportunities to people, because then it's sort of like, if you give a man a fish, he has fish for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, he has fish for a lifetime. It's that sort of thing. So you need to figure out ways to give people jobs and give people opportunities to get themselves out of poverty instead of throwing money at the problem and hoping that it goes away. So I think, programs like welfare definitely touch on a solution, but I feel like the execution has not been satisfactory. Reforming social programs like welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, and then Social Security. I don't know if that's a poverty issue, but.
And then.
Oh my God.
And then, so speaking of opportunities, one way that a lot of people get their opportunities in life is through education.
Mm-hmm.
So one issue that's been very contentious nowadays is the issue of affirmative action, based on race and based on gender.
Yep.
So what's sort of your opinion on affirmative action as it relates to higher education?
Well, I have a clear bias because under the affirmative action idea, I would be disadvantaged, but I think affirmative action had a very valuable use in the past, and I feel like its usefulness is slowly deteriorating. Like, for example, black people used to not be able to go to Stanford, and so now you have all these white people that have third, fourth, fifth generation legacies at Stanford, and they get advantages that black people don't have because, African Americans don't have ancestors that went to Stanford because they weren't allowed to go. So, it made sense to give people, I don't want to say it, an easier time, but more of a chance to go to these elite schools. And but the question is, how many generations is it going to take for us to say, all right, we're equal now? So I feel like the affirmative action had a use in the past, and I think it still has value, but it's slowly becoming less and less valuable. And I think definitely in my lifetime, we're going to reach a point where we realize affirmative action, its usefulness is no longer there.
We're going to reach a point when, to sort of paraphrase, when instead of its original purpose, which is to give equal advantage to people, it's not disadvantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, affirmative action, people sugarcoat it however they want, but what it is you give lower standards to people who are African American or have some sort of non-white ethnic background, and so lowering standards that's like the definition of equality. If you have a standard for one group of people and a standard for another, and it's different. So I mean, yeah.
And then, you know, to go from affirmative action to the, you know, the sort of racial, what seems like a very racial divide in this country. What do you think has caused this divide, and how do you think we can? I mean, we'll never really get out of it. Like that's gonna take a while. But how do you think we can sort of combat this very, what seems like almost like two separate experiences of life? How do you think we can combat that?
That is a very that's a question that does not have an easy answer.
Right. So I mean, sorry. But so if you're not going to determine a concrete solution, then what do you think are the elements that the problems?
All right. So definitely, the criminal justice system is. If I were to put like one really polarizing factor when it comes to race, it's definitely the criminal justice system. I mean, we have Eric Holder is African American. He's the leader of the Justice Department, but that still hasn't had an impact on race relation. I mean, every week we see people getting killed for no reason by the police. And it's not only black people, it's everybody. And we're seeing like police militarization. They literally have like armored vehicles that you see in Afghanistan that the U.S. military has.
They have surplus.
They have you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. And the way that we prosecute people, plea deals is one of the most corrupt things I've ever heard of. Like saying, hey, if you take this to trial, I'm going to give you a sentence that's 20 to life, but if you just admit that you're guilty, I'll give you 3 years. It's like, well, whether he's guilty or not guilty, he's going to take the 3 years. It's a great way to get innocent people in prison. So I think the plea deal system disproportionately affects African Americans, and it just corrupts the system in general. So, and I think, you know, drug laws are another huge thing. Black people disproportionately get arrested and convicted, and not even convicted, they take the plea deal. So it's like, I think, you know, just some common sense reform when it comes to, especially plea deals. That really pisses me off, because like, it's so many people are in prison for things that they didn't commit because they're scared that they're gonna get 20 to life. And so, it's just crap, you know?
And then, sort of to give a final question, another thing that seems to be dividing this country, but not in the way of, you know, people getting killed every day, but sort of a cultural divide, is that of people who are very religious and then people who seem to be like more atheistic. And, you know, because in the past we had, you know, I mean, if you look at the motto of our country, "In God We Trust,"
Yep.
You know, so there definitely is this, you know, religious tradition in our country. But how do we sort of balance that with this very, you know, irreligious, I don't know if there's a negative connotation to that term, but this very like atheistic, sort of newer generation that seems to be developing?
Yeah, so I think religion is very fascinating, especially when it comes to like the United States, because the United States historically has been a Protestant nation. I mean, it's a lot of the parts of our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence almost mirror parts of the Bible. And so it's very fascinating to look at. And, you know, then there comes the problem where, like, the First Amendment says freedom to religion, but what about freedom of absence of religion, you know? Because there is a growing number of atheists and people that don't identify with religion. Myself, I don't really identify with religion personally. I mean, my mom grew up Catholic. She was part of her town, everybody was Catholic, and they were, you know, she was one of 9, right? And she grew up in a very racist Catholic, you know, area. Like, she told me a story, no black people. First time she saw a black person, she was 35 years old, and there was a black family moving into her town. They were gonna move in on Monday, and the house burnt down Sunday night. You know, so she grew up in a very racist part of the U.S., and it was very Catholic too. And without a doubt, religion does lead to a us-them type thing, especially with race. I mean, there are parts of the Bible that specifically talk about how, you know, black people are not equal. They're less than. And you know, some people will argue, oh, it's not supposed to be literal. It's not supposed to. It's a metaphor for this or that. But what a crappy metaphor then, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting thing to look at. But yeah, there is a growing.
I'm proud of you, Eddie.
Growing.
I knew it.
Atheist
I'm glad you
population, yeah.
accepted it. Thank you very much for swearing.